Thank you. Yes, so welcome everyone. Thanks for staying after the break. I know it's been a long day for everyone here, also for me. As George said, I'm from Berlin. I'm an Android developer. I'm working currently with Android professionally. I do Flutter on my spare time, like all the rest of my time. But compared to Miguel, I don't do it professionally yet. So why am I talking then about the WebViews today? It's not like the most amazing topic ever, probably, but this comes out of curiosity because back in January I gave a talk with Emily Fortuna from the Flutter team where we coded an app for displaying, to show the people how to use Flutter, and we wanted to use WebViews because it was kind of a new thing they had. But we could not go deeper into details on how it worked because of many reasons. So it was something I wanted to try myself, like go deeper into the code and look how it worked, because it was very interesting looking. And yes, so that's basically why I'm talking about WebViews. So if you're wondering what's a WebView, this is basically a browser bundle inside your mobile application. And using a WebView will allow you to use web technologies, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. So you can display some content. And on Android and iOS, a WebView is like another component, like a button or a text view. Just a WebView is like a mini browser inside your application, which is kind of cool if you think about it. How do we use them? In general, we use them to display something that already exists, so we don't have to implement it again. That can be like when you need to go to a third-party website to sign in on something or do a payment, let's say. Or you want to show some static content, like the FAQ, the frequent asked questions, because normally for the FAQ, you don't have an API to get this data and display it, so we basically just show what the website has. Some people, sometimes, everyone knows that they bundle full websites on their applications and in their applications, but we are native developers, and I'm sure no one here does that. So on Flutter, a WebView is a widget, but it doesn't come bundled with the SDK, with the Flutter SDK, by default. So you have to import it like another plugin. So what I'm talking about is the plugin for the WebView that Google officially released. Later, I will mention the community plugin and compare them. But if you see this, you can find it under the pub.dev website. Just search for WebView and you find it. This is still considered, if I'm not mistaken, a developer preview. This screenshot might be month old, not sure. But if I'm not mistaken, nothing has changed as far as I have seen. And, well, for the setup, as on any other plugin, you basically just declare it on your pubspec YAML file. And after you synchronize and you get the packages, you're going to be ready to use it on Android. On iOS, you will do another step I didn't display here, which is basically, you don't see it here, but it's basically just adding a key on the info list file on iOS. And it's basically to opt in to allow the embedding views. So, yeah. How has the widget, the WebView, implemented in Flutter? So they didn't re-implement the WebViews they did not create a Dart WebKit, but instead what they do is to use the native platform with WebView. On iOS, it's the Flutter WebView is backed by the WebKit WebView, and on Android by the Android WebKit WebView. And Flutter then will be using the one corresponding on the platform that your app is running in. So then, is this a widget? Yes, it's just using the native view, but it renders inside Flutter. It's been rendering this view, the native view, inside Flutter, and you can use it as another widget. So, how does the rendering work? Now I want to show you how the rendering of native views work. This will be applied for other native views. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to go deeper into WebViews. I wanted to know how they render native platform views. So I'm going to focus on Android because I am an Android developer. But on iOS, I will show you later, it's basically working the same way. It just uses different classes. So for this talk, I have a simple application where I'm showing a list of items, displaying some resources for learning Flutter, and then by clicking on one of the items, you go to a second screen where you can see a WebView full page. So how did I go deeper into code? If you know, there's a plugin for Android Studio IntelliJ, and I think you can also do the same way with Dart Tools, where you can see the widget tree of your application, and that's what you see here. So this is the second screen where I have on top an app bar, which is the action bar on Android, and then I have a web view, which is taking the whole body of the application. And this is inside the scaffold, inside the material application. So when you click on the web view, this item in this inspector tool, you will see what's inside, what's been created. There's a lot of stuff here, but I'm only interested in the Android view, which is already suggesting something. So now I'm going to show you a diagram on about how this works. I'm going to display the Flutter part in blue, of course, and the Android one in green. So first, we have a web view widget. Once you create your app, the one I had, for example, I have my widget, web view widget. And this is a Flutter site. This, as you saw before, contains a child that's called the Android view. The Android view goal is to embed Android views, as the name says, in the widget hierarchy. And, well, once you go to the documentation, you will see that this is an expensive operation. Okay, doesn't say anything else, but you will see why. So once you start your application, the framework will register a WebView Flutter plugin on the Android side and will give it an ID. So when you need to create a native web view, like Flutter site says, hey, I wanted you to create a native web view, it's going to use that ID. So in our case, the Android view that is contained in the Flutter web view uses the same ID to say, hey, create this when it's needed. Then the Flutter engine will use the WebView factory to create the actual native web view. So So far, we have created the native web view. Now we have to make it render something, and we have to display it on Flutter side. So on the native side, we have a platform view controller that will take care of the rendering of the native web view. But instead of displaying this web view, native web view, on the screen, it's going to use a surface to display the data. So instead of the screen, you have it in a surface, let's say. And then Flutter has to use that surface data to display the content somehow. So back on the Flutter side, we have our Android view that contains an Android platform view, which is also containing a render Android view. And this is basically a render box. So render box, what it does is basically just display things on the screen. So I think you see the pattern here. We have something on the Flutter side that can render something on the screen. We have our web view being rendered on a surface somewhere. Now we need this data to connect to Flutter so it can display something. So finally, the rendered Android view is the one that will draw the native web view, all the contents on the screen. And how it's going to do that? It's going to use the data that is contained on the surface, accessing it via an ID, and it's going to read all the data and display it on the screen. And if you think about it, this is for every single instance of the web view, everything. So for me, that's the reason why it's so expensive. That's an expensive operation. Okay, so if you were sleeping on this section, it's fine, because I have a TLDL, like too long didn't listen, for you. So the Flutter web view is using the native plugin to create an instance of the native web view. And this one is going to be rendered on the surface, and the surface data is going to be read by the Flutter side by the render Android view. It's going to display this on the screen. And basically that means it's copying data and showing it. And guess what? This is the way you can also use Maps, Google Maps, for example. That's how basically it works also behind. This is how the Flutter renders platform views, which I found really amazing. So what about iOS? Well, similar to Android, but instead of using the render Android view, is using this render UI kit view, which will do the same. It's going to render the native web view on a surface, going to copy the data and display it on Flutter. Okay, too long about platform views stuff. Let's take a look at the web view widget. So the web view widget already gives you a series of parameters to use, which are worth checking. I'm going to go through them, most of them. First would be the initial URL, which, first you create your web view widget, of course, and this already works. You don't have to set anything else, but of course you need some data. One thing you can do is to set an initial URL, which is the website you want to load on creation of the web view. But this is optional. If you do this, this is going to work because Flutter Dev works. But if you try another website, it can be that it doesn't load for some reason, and you don't know why. So it could be about JavaScript. It could be because of JavaScript. Because websites may require running JavaScript, And the thing is that by default is disabled. So if you use your, you try the widget and set up an initial URL, but it doesn't work, it can be the JavaScript. So for this, you basically have to say, hey, I want the JavaScript runs unrestricted. That's it. And there are two modes, basically, disabled or unrestricted. Another cool parameter is on the WebView created, which already gives you an idea of what it's doing. So this parameter expects a callback, a WebView created callback, which is invoked once the WebView is created. And you can save a controller, like an instance of the controller for you, so you can, as it says, control the WebView somehow. So what can you do with a WebView? So for now, you have basic commands to use, like check if you can go back, then you can do go back, for example, or forward. You can reload the page, some things. This is, of course, changing. So it could be that soon we have some more parameters. All of these are asynchronous. That means that you have to do await async calls. So how you use one of them? For example, I can show you the reload. Let's say I have my second screen when I'm showing the web view, and you want to refresh because something wasn't loaded properly. So for example, on the action bar, on the app bar, I have an icon for refreshing. So if this icon is an icon button, for example, you have the onPress command. So you can do an async await call and call your controller and say, reload this page. So on onPress, to reload. Yeah. So another callback would be on page finished. Again, it already tells you what it's doing. This is basically receiving the URL that just loaded. So how can you use that? So this gives you a URL of the website that just loaded. So you can use it, for example, to change the UI. Let's say when you are showing a progress bar and you want to hide it once the page has finished loading. That would be a use case. Then we have just your recognizers. If you have, imagine that you have a list, like for example, the list I had before of items, they had a web view inside, like a preview. If I want to scroll the list view, if I'm typing the web view, could be that I'm scrolling the web view instead of the list. So that's why you have just your recognizers. I don't have examples here because this will make this talk really, really long. And so I encourage you to take a look at this amazing article by Emily Fortuna on WebViews. Also, there's a Flutter Boring Show episode where she, together I think with Philip, they are including WebViews in the Hacker News app they had. Like they also had a list view of the Hacker News, whatever, and they were displaying a preview of the article inside the items. So you can see live how it works. Then we have navigation delegates. Imagine that you have your user on your web view and they tap on Twitter and they navigate to Twitter. And now you have your users using your web view to navigate internet. Yeah, you have a mini browser and it's cool. but you want to keep your users contained, right? You don't want to use your mini browser to just navigate. So that's how you can just navigation delegate. You can, well, let me show you first. So this is receiving a callback, also a navigation request callback, which is then returning a navigation decision, saying, yes, I want you to navigate to this page or not. And, sorry. Yes, so you have two values, prevent and or allow. Okay, so how do you use it? Imagine I have my application. Here's just an example. Let's say I have the flutter.dev website, which is my host, and I want just to give the user a way to navigate Flutter.dev. I can check if the URL I'm receiving belongs to my host, so I allow the navigation, or I just prevent it. Pretty simple. And then last but not least, we have the JavaScript channels, which are kind of cool, to be honest. This basically allows JavaScript to communicate with Flutter. You can have as many channels as you want. Here I just have one. I declare my variable, my channel, my JavaScript channel, which has two properties. One is a name, which is gonna be used on the JavaScript side. This will look like a static class object. And then I have my onMessageReceive, which is another callback. And this is basically receiving the message that JavaScript is sending, which for now is only a string. Here what I'm doing, just printing because I want to see how it works. Okay, how can you use this on the real world or on the JavaScript side? So this is the Flutter side. I declare my JavaScript channel. And then on the HTML side, on my website, I can just write my script, use my Lara demo JavaScript channel, and say, send this message, post message, hello. Once you're running your application, and this script is run when you open the web view with that URL that contains the script, this is going to send the message, and it's going to be read by the JavaScript channel, and you're going to print message. Okay, so yeah, WebView widget can do some things nice, from basic navigation to interaction with JavaScript, but this is still an early stage plugin. That means that it's not feature complete. It's been here for a long while, but well, there are some limitations. So back in November, December, when we were preparing the talk, there was a huge issue on the WebView widget, which made us to have to look for a better example that didn't contain this. The issue was that when you open a WebView, a website with an input field, and you tapped on the input field, the keyword wasn't showing. So yeah, we had to look for an example that didn't contain any input fields. That was hard. Of course, this was a really deal breaker for many people using WebViews. Imagine you're doing like some social login on a website and you cannot just input anything, so you could not use it. Good news is that I think it was last week, this was fixed. So I can say, this was fixed. Kinda. Because seems like the keyboard is working, but there are some bugs. Of course, there are always bugs. So I saw the keyboard, good news, it's there, but yeah, almost there. Another issue is with text selection. You know that on Android, on iOS works similarly. When you select some text, you have some handles on top for copy, paste, whatever. Those are not being shown on Android. So what they've done is to basically override the long press gesture and does nothing. So you cannot select anything. And this is still not fixed. Yeah. And there's a milestone near 10 goals, which I don't know what it means, so I guess it's soon. Yeah. But yeah. And the other thing is the Android view is quite costly. Everyone asks always about performance, and well, the Flutter team already tells you on the documentation that you should not be using Android views. You should always use the Flutter widgets. The first time I gave this talk, someone said, well, performance, it works fine on my phone. I said, yeah, well, it depends, I guess. But you saw already how it works internally. You can imagine how costly this could be. So avoid using native views if you can't. If you can, be mindful. But not everything is bad news. The Flutter team and the community is always working on improving this plugin and more stuff. And there's also a lot of interest on making this feature ready. For example, there's a PR open for setting a custom user agent. A user agent will help the website to know that you're accessing your application from a trusted client, but not from another. This was really cool for me, but it's been sitting there for 3 months. And that's a cool talk, needs love. That means that the author didn't update anything for the last basically 3 months. So they are looking for people that can help with this PR and make it ready. So if you want to contribute, this is a cool one to do. Also, there's another PR open to solve an issue where you want to basically know when your page loaded correctly, and that's something that the plugin doesn't give you now at the moment. Thankfully, there's this PR, but that's it. I think that was also sitting. Basically, all the PRs open for the WebView widget have been sitting for a while. And then there's another, which is loading an HTML string. So for example, if you have a document HTML locally on your app, you want to show that, for example, or the strings you get with the HTML tags embedded. And yeah, I wanted to say something. Yeah. So community plugin. Besides the official one, that's the community plugin. One of the contributors is here, which is Simon. Oh, I didn't know. So how does it compare to the official plugin? Well, they were completely different. The community one is using the native web view and putting it on top. If I'm not mistaken, it's on top of everything. So that means that it's not embedded. It's not in your widget hierarchy. It's just on top. So you cannot do cool things that you can do with the official one, which is put some widgets on top of the web view. I didn't mention that, but the official one is a widget, so you can do whatever you want, like other widgets. With this one, you can't. The good thing, though, is that everything that works on the native web view works with this one too. So it doesn't have the many issues as the official plugin has. So you should be able to use the one that suits you better, I guess. How to use it? You basically just add a WebView scaffold on your home, and this will put your WebView on top. That's what I understood. But last week, I spoke to Simon. And he shared that this plugin is going to be deprecated, if I'm not mistaken, right? I said, yeah. So, yeah. So I guess yes. I wasn't sure, but yeah. So that changed a lot. Like, now you will be using, I guess, the official one, which has limitations. So that's why I want to talk about contributing, because, well, you've seen that the official plugin needs some love, and by contributing, how can you do that? You can update, the documentation. That's something my first open source PR, which was just, yeah, which I'm proud of. But it was basically only fixing a mistake on the documentation while I was diving into JavaScript channels. But it's a way of contributing. Also, you can follow issues like I was following. I came across of this message when I was basically following all the issues on the web view. And this is one comment that one Google engineer made. And he said that they prioritize issues by the count of thumbs up. That means that you can also contribute to open source by giving your thumbs up to issues on descriptions. So if you see a feature that you would like them to implement or an issue to be fixed, you can give thumbs up. That's a way of contributing too. And you already know Flutter is open source, so you can submit pull requests, of course. Not everyone has time for that, so you can give thumbs up. You can comment on issues, on PRs, and help people. It's a way of contributing. So yeah, thank you. You will find my slides on Twitter. There's also, I have a GitHub project, but I don't have it linked on Twitter. I'm sorry, I'm going to do it later. But thank you so much to Flutter London for inviting me today. I hope the WebViews talk wasn't boring. WebViews are hard, I know. So if you have any questions, I will be around. I don't know how long we have today, but I will be around. You can always find me on Twitter, ask me there on the Flutter study group Slack channel, Slack team. Yeah, thank you so much.
Does anybody have any questions? Oh, Simon.
Not exactly questions, but comments. So Raphael, myself, and Jay are actually working to merge all of the features from the community plugin into the real main plugin. So any of the features we have right now will eventually make its way into the official plugin.
One of those things includes, for the people that are interested, better support for headers for your website, so you can send proper headers for authentication and all that, and especially cookies is what we're currently implementing. And we might even push an update to the community plugin, so it will internally use the official one, so people that already have the plugin installed. The community one will sort of automatically upgrade, but yes, we will deprecate it and push all the work onto the official plugin. So please look at that one from now on and look for PRs from us sometime soon.
So I guess you will need a lot of people helping you out, because you have on the native web view has lots of features that the plugin, the official one, doesn't have. Which, yeah. It was sad.
Right, volunteers wanted.
Yeah, it was quite sad looking at the features, next features for the official one. It was sad because I didn't see many movement, like interest or whatever, I don't know. And yeah, the last time I gave this talk, 3 weeks ago, I was like, you kinda need to choose which you need to use. If you want to have widgets on top of your web view, you have to use the official plugin. But if you want the web view to work, you need to use the community one. So, yeah, soon.
Any further questions?
Just a random question. Is the official plugin going to work on the desktop side?
I can.
That's practically a question for Simon.
You're asking if the official web view will work on desktop?
Yes.
There's no current plans as far as I know, but I'm sure it will eventually.
Web views inside Flutter website.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Anyone? Come on. Were you just saving them down the pub? Pub? Pub. All right, round of applause. Thank you very much, Lara.